Yo, what is up guys, we're RapTRz here bringing you another top tier build video. Today we're going to focus on our homie GRUX'S, an insanely good hero, an insanely good jungler, initiator, and bruiser. He is so good. He has an insanely powerful kit. He has a dash ability which he can use to engage and disengage. He has an AoE form of crowd control, which is his pull, which he can use to isolate single targets, pull multiple targets, or another way you can use it is to peel off your carry or peel off for your allies as well. He also has another AoE form of CC, and that is his ultimate. His Warlord's Challenge does an area of effect CC that can disrupt channel abilities. Also, he has his double pain ability, which is really good for just doing raw straight up damage because it hits like a truck, and it's also really good to clear early game camps because GRUX'S has an insanely fast jungle clear, and another reason why I like using GRUX'S. The faster you can clear jungle camps, the more time you have to contest river buffs. The faster you can clear jungle camps, the faster you can go rotate to other lanes. The more time you have to make plays happen, which is why I love GRUX'S. He has a really good jungle clear, and he can make a lot of time for himself to do other things just besides jungling. For other junglers, it might take a little longer to clear camps, so they don't have as much time to do things like GRUX'S has. So anyways, moving on, we're gonna go into the build. In this build, I focus on emphasizing his defensive and also his damage as well, calling it a bruiser build, a great build for initiating team fights and being able to last in team fights, which is so good. You're a frontliner, you are there to protect your carry and your caster and those other people who are dealing damage in your team, and you're also a great initiator. With his dash and his pull and his Warlord's Challenge and his double pain, he can pull off insane combos, and he can pull off a great initiations for your allies. So he falls really good into a well-rounded team comp that has DPS casters, that has DPS carries, and having a front line there like GRUX'S, like the way we're going to build him today, is another powerful asset when it comes to building a well-rounded team comp. So before we get into the build, this is top tier builds where we go from the early game to the mid game to the late game. We break it down and I show you the knowledge, why I pick certain cards and why I do certain things in this deck. Hopefully teach you something new when you're building decks yourself. But anyways, let's get right into the build. But before we get into the build, let's go to our utility. There's not much utility, but there are some crucial cards I want to mention. Have the Centurion as your prime card. Again, we're focusing on defensive initiator and a defensive frontliner. So having more health is going to help you initiate and frontline for your allies. So having extra health in the Centurion is, for me, it's a must. I just have to have it. We're also going to throw in an extra cast token or an extra consumable. It can be whatever you want. I just threw an extra cast token because I had 1 point left over. We're also going to get a dummy ward. A dummy ward is a shadow ward without any upgrades. You use it in the early game when you start the game, after you place it down in a crucial spot like the river buff or another choke point within the enemy jungler, or just anywhere you want that you think may be really good. You place it down, you go back to base, you discard it, and you start with your early game cards. Dummy wards are really good. I try to use it in most of my builds to get that early game vision. Also, we have blood-soaked armor. A quick rundown on blood-soaked armor. You use this in the early game and the mid game, and you're going to discard it later. You use blood-soaked armor because it applies bleed stacks to the Raptor camps, and it also applies bleed stacks to the Ornn Prime camp. You use this, they will attack you, it will apply bleed stacks to them, making them clear faster. I made a video about this. It will be in the description if you want a more in-depth view on why blood-soaked armor is really good. But anyways, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. You use it in the early game, mid game, and then you discard it later. So now moving on to the early part of the build. In the early game, you're going to go ahead and put a Sage's Siphon. You're going to go ahead and put 3 minor power. We're going to use this Sage's Siphon to sustain in the jungle with a unique passive. By then, you can also pick up your ward, which is usually what I like doing next. You're going to pick up the ward that I'm going to mention later in the game with the upgrades in the mid game. But go ahead, you can slot your ward. I usually don't upgrade it though, but you can go ahead and pick up a ward, which is the ward that we're going to use here in the mid game. But anyways, your first other 2 cards that you're going to upgrade is going to be your Mad Stone Gems. You have 2 of them, each of them having minor power in them, making them 5-point cards. Now I go with early game power with my Sage's Siphon and my 2 Madstone Gems, because with power, I have power to clear my jungle camps faster, which is really crucial to give your allies CXP, but it also allows you to have enough power to gank, allows you to have enough power on your abilities too. You don't want to gank and be hitting like a wet napkin, okay? That's why we build power in the early game. So I keep these as long as I can so I can have my power in the early game. So now moving on to the mid-game part of the build. In the mid-game, this is when I like to slot my blood-soaked armor once again, just to help clear those raptor camps faster for my carry. Then our second card is going to be an Elder Mage Amulet. And our Elder Mage Amulet, we're going to go ahead and slot a 3 major power, a 2 health, and a 1 health, again giving us more early game power and a little bit more health. Our third card is going to be a Wind Carver Blade. In our Wind Carver Blade, we're going to go ahead and slot 3 major powers, making it a 12-point card, 3 power, and another 3 power, making it a 12-point. And again, just more early game damage, focusing on that power spike that we have in the early game and mid game. And then our last card that we use in the mid game is our Guardian's Ward. This was the ward that we slotted in the early game just because I like having that early game vision just by having the ward. But now in the mid game, this is when I want to start building up my health. So in the Guardian's Ward, we're going to go ahead and slot 9 points of health. I'm bad with my math right now. So it's a 12-point card, all of it being 3 major health. By this time, I have gotten rid of my Sage's Siphon and my Madstone Gem. So you can utilize those cards whenever you need them to fill out your Wind Carver Blade and fill out your Guardian's Ward. Now, sometimes I may take my Guardian's Ward a little bit earlier, first besides my Wind Carver Blade, or I might take my Wind Carver Blade earlier than my Guardian's Ward. It's all up to you. Usually I like taking my Wind Carver Blade first just for that extra damage. Now moving on to the late game. In the late game, I like taking my Tuned Barrier first, because by then the abilities hit a little bit harder than basic attacks. So I like taking my Tuned Barrier. It's a 9-point card, 3, 2, 1 barrier. Our second card is a Tempered Plate, 3, 2, 1 what is it, freaking guard? Yeah, guard. 3, 2, 1 guard, making it another 9-point armor card. Then our last card in the late game is a Whirling Wand, making it 3, 2, 1 kinetic. Just again focusing a little bit more on that damage side, but by then it's just icing on the cake because we swing harder. But again, we have 2 armor cards, then we have our Guardian's Ward with health, then we also have an Elder Mage Amulet with health. And then we have our damage card with our Wind Carver Blade and our Whirling Wand. And then we curved it out pretty good with the early game cards like our Madstone Gems and our Dummy Wards and the Blood Soaked Armor. So we had a little bit of utility in there. And that's the main build that I like rolling with. So I'm going to show you my second deck, and that is my anti-crowd control deck. I use this when there's more than 2 abilities of crowd control on the enemy team. So if they have a knock-up or a stun that they can possibly use on it, or they just in general have a lot of crowd control like knock-up stun, then I will roll with my Bruiser anti-crowd control deck. It's basically the same thing, so I'm going to show you this as well. You go with Centurion, 2 cast tokens, your Madstone Gems are the same, you have a Blood-Soaked Armor, you have a Dummy Ward, you have your Guardian's Ward, Sage's Siphon's the same, Tempered Plate is the same, Tuned Barrier, same thing. But instead of a Whirling Wand like we had in the other build and an Elder Mage Amulet, we have 2 Wind Carver Blades, 3 power, 2 power, and a minor kinetic. Same thing with the other Wind Carver Blade, 3 power, 2 power, and a minor kinetic. Then our special card, and the reason why this build is the build that I also use is because of Thermal Bond. I have Thermal Bond in this deck. So in Thermal Bond, I put 3 greater health and a lesser health, making it a 12-point card. What Thermal Bond does, basically it gives you determination. So every time you get stunned, rooted, or knocked up, you will regenerate. You will heal for 12% of that max health. Of your max health, basically. And this effect can stack, so if you get stunned 2 times back to back, it's gonna stack the passive as well. That's the only difference, is these Wind Carver Blades and Thermal Bond. That's the only difference from the other build. It's situational. If there's a lot of crowd control, I get this one. If there isn't a lot of crowd control, then I'll get my other build. So I interchange between these 2 builds, and why I thought I should show you both of them, because I don't just use one, I use 2 decks when it comes to playing GRUX'S. So, and I interchange based off the team comp. So before I slot my deck, I check the team comp, I count how many crowd control abilities they have, and that's when I decide. Usually if they have 2, I might get my Thermal Bond, but if it's more than 3, I will definitely get my Thermal Bond deck, which is the anti-crowd control deck. So that's basically the 2 decks for today for GRUX'S, the ones I like rolling with, my Bruiser build, and then my full Bruiser build, which is the one I first showed you. But anyways guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the build video. Both of these decks are down in the description in the link. If you want to copy them, they're in the link description so you can get a better look at them. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the build video. It's your boy RapTRz, and I'll see you guys on Paragon.